The Vintage Gentleman Show.
Well, Michael, we're here. We made it. The inaugural podcast for Vintage Gentlemen. I couldn't think of a more appropriate guest to be on this first episode than you. You've been a part of this journey intimately from the time where I had all these projects going and I would call this a thing to where we are today, where it has become the thing. So as a business consultant, a licensed therapist, a counselor, a coach, you've been a part of helping shape and develop what was first just an idea. I thought, I want to do a podcast, but I don't know what I want to do with the podcast. And through some iterations, it became Vintage Gentleman. But then you really helped think through like the bigger picture to where we had the business plan and a whole strategy. And it grew from this smaller entity to this movement that we want to do that has so many components to it. So I thank you for being here with me.
Dwayne, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to be on this ride of telling the world all about Vintage Gentlemen. I'm excited because people are hungry. Men are hungry for something authentic. They're hungry to be something that's primal inside of them. And over the years, I've just listened and heard men, and they're curious, but they really don't know where to go. So I'm really excited to be here.
That's great. Well, as I've mentioned to you multiple times, I'm not claiming to be the vintage gentleman. What I am saying is I'm on a journey to become the best man I can be on all the levels of health and psychologically, mentally, physically, spiritually, all of those things. I want to be running at the top of my game. And I'm inviting people who that message might resonate with to come along with me on this journey, because I'm going to be talking with, so many people we've already have in the queue and have spoken with so many people who are already calling themselves vintage gentlemen before we even had a soft launch. Just had a conversation with somebody, a mutual friend of ours yesterday, and I was blown away by his love and passion for vintage gentlemen. And he's got the coolest stuff going on in his life. He's developing, an app and doing a launch himself, and yet he's saying, I'm a vintage gentleman. That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's been so much fun walking with you and seeing this birth, seeing this thing, as you said, turn into a movement, an organization, and a podcast of just one thing. And I think the neat thing that I keep seeing as you talk about it, as you share it, there's a little twinkle that happens in guys' eyes. They're excited because there's something primal in them that they know that they want it. Just like your friend you just mentioned, he goes, I'm a vintage gentleman. It ups the game a little bit. It raises the bar. And the next inevitable thing that comes out of Guy's mouth is, what does that really look like? So the timing, the place that you're bringing this to this planet is just really exciting in my seat in the bus.
Yeah, man. On the flip side, I share the concept with another gentleman, and I actually sent him something that was some written content, and then he texts back and he goes, I love this, but I don't think I'm not the guy. Like, I'm not a vintage gentleman. And I said, well, because you said that, I think you are the guy. You're the perfect guy. He in his mind, he thought it was a list of things you have to accomplish, a way that you have to dress, a personality that you have to have, some character traits. But we're all lacking in different areas. And that, again, is the reason for this. Like, for me, this journey really was birthed out of my own experiences. When I was contemplating, launching a platform, what would resonate with me? What would be something that I feel that I have something to offer? And in the creative world, they often say, write what you know. If you're an author, write what you know. And so I thought about that. And what I know is I've had wins and I've had losses. I've had successes, I've had failures. I've had great times and I've had bad times. And more importantly, in all of those I wasn't always equipped with the tools that were necessary to really manage or navigate some of those situations I was in. So, for instance, like I came from a broken home. You know, my dad wasn't around, so I didn't have a great marriage to model or a father role model in the house to model after. So when I became a husband and a father, I remember times like literally I read books and listened to content, and then I would say, oh, okay, is this the part where I go, no, there's, what I say goes, or is this the part where I go, well, I'm not going to try to win this argument. Or is this the part where I discipline them? Or is this the part where I sit and talk to them? I pretended I was trying to fake it till I make it kind of scenario, but we don't have to live like that, and that's what this, again, Vintage Gentleman exists for, is so that hopefully the content that's shared by the way, it's men and women that will be speaking into this. We're not just to be a well-rounded individual. There's so many aspects to that that I think we could learn a lot from women too when they speak about what they're looking for, when we talk about traditional manhood and masculinity.
Dwayne, I love what you said. I'm not a vintage gentleman yet. I'm on the road to it. That's what I hear you saying. And when I talk to men and when I talk to women, the ones that are the most powerful, the ones that I think are doing great things, are aware that they haven't arrived. They're hungry for something more. And when I listen to culture, I realize people aren't sure where to go for those answers. So, you mentioned that some things weren't modeled for you. My upbringing was the opposite. A lot of those things were modeled for me, so they became kind of easy for me to understand. Yet there were other things that weren't modeled that are really important for me as a man, for how I lead, how I drive, how I share my life with this world, that I just love the idea that we're not yet there, that we're moving and improving. And I love that, because that's an invitation for anybody. Anybody that goes, I want more. In my world, in my work, men and women are saying, I want more. And they're scratching their head trying to figure out what it is. Intrinsically, there's some qualities of life. There are some things, some behaviors that we can do as individuals that really make us exceptional. I love the name of your organization, Vintage Gentleman. It makes me think back of my grandfather and how he spoke and what he did. And I could say that was old school. I could say that was vintage. But what I'd really say is, well, that was what a gentleman was like. And he was warm, and he was inviting, he was engaging, and he was well thought. So I just get excited knowing that you're going to put out content, you're going to put out information that invites both men and women to say, I want more. I'm hungry for more. And I'm not sure how to go about that. So again, I'm just really excited to be here at this bottom floor, the basement of this birthing out, because the world's hungry right now. And as I've gotten to know you, I realize that your answers aren't, I have it all figured out. But I'm on the road, and I'm working it out. And that's an exciting thing to be a part of. Yeah.
It's a great point that you make, that all of our backgrounds are different. Where I come from, where you come from. This is not a one-size-fits-all scenario. We're kind of like onions. You peel it apart. There's all these different layers. And what I might model as manliness might not be what you model as manliness. I like motorcycles. I like the rumble. I like surfing. I like shoot and skeet. Those are some of the hobby activities I actually do, snowboarding, stuff like that. But it doesn't mean everybody has to like that. I'm not, forming a motorcycle club per se, although vintage biker. Anyway.
More to come.
Yeah. But like our buddy we were talking about earlier, he said the same thing to me. He's like, I had a great upbringing. I had a great dad. I had a great mom. But there was still something in me that I hadn't figured it out yet. And he's like, that's what drew me to Vintage Gentleman. What the concepts that are being spoken of and the ideas and the community. And that's really important, that this is a community, like-minded individuals that want the same thing. Not only, this isn't just about self-improvement and look at me. It's about leaving a legacy, a lasting impression, moving the needle culturally. in the best way that we can, especially when culture now and social media and television and all the content that we consume paint men can paint men in a certain light, negative. And not that some of that isn't possibly justified. There are good people and bad people. They exist. But we're talking about core character traits with Vintage Gentlemen. Again, there's the provider, the protector, roles that we naturally were born to fulfill. Our minds, the way that our minds work, the way that we think, generally speaking, as men, can be unique to men. And so how do we, again, navigate those paths in life when we have these circumstances that we come across, and what's the best way to present, and how to dress in certain circumstances, and even some practical how-to stuff. Do you know how to change a tire? If you don't, it's okay, but we're going to show you how. Do you know how to tie a bow tie for that black tie event that you might be invited to? We're going to help you with that. Those are low-level things, but also, we're going to have deeper discussions and events, and really some specialized tools for business people, leadership, anything that you can think of as an individual, as a human, as a man that you want to improve on. We're going to be delving deep into those topics.
Dwayne, I love what you said about collective and community. So it doesn't necessarily mean to be a vintage gentleman you look one way or you sound one way. What I heard you say is it's you dialing into who you are uniquely, and then applying that, understanding that enough, holding that tightly, and then pouring that back out. And it doesn't have to look a certain way or walk a certain way. I think that's Dwayne, I think that's information that people are hungry for. I think social media, as you're referencing, and Hollywood, it can kind of paint a picture that this is what life needs to look like and has to look like, and that cuts out individuality. And that actually, it precludes some people from saying, I'm important, my life matters, because maybe I don't like to go shoot skeet. Maybe I like to read books. Does that take away from me being a man, being a gentleman? Well, of course not. That's why I love the community that you're building. I love that men and women are going to be able to contribute and say, this is what I'm doing with excellence, and this is how it affects this world, and this is how it makes me feel. That's empowerment. And as people live empowered and they're not ashamed of that, and that furthers culture, society, this planet continuing to go around, that's a good thing. So again, I'm just excited that you're here, that you're doing this now, and that you're ready to put out, I heard you say a couple of things, content, events, how-tos. I'd love to hear more of what you see that as what are we going to be feeling? What are we going to be seeing soon?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there will be a variety of different things that we do. Obviously podcasting. Yeah. Multiple types of video content, multiple pieces of video content and series, everything from how-to, sitting with older gentlemen who maybe they're retired already and have a wealth of, a lifetime of knowledge and wisdom that they can help, share with our listeners and viewers. We're going to have an apparel line and a product line, curated boxes of specific types of product, branded product. In fact, again, as a business consultant, you've shown that there are different steps along the path of creating something that has lasting potential, something that's going to last, something that has value. And although we never put on a specific focus group and tested Vintage Gentlemen, that kind of happened organically, where just being in the marketplace, just talking about it, there's been a focus group of sorts, because there's a group that we go to every week, and that group of people have spoken into this. And then the inspiration that is happening, that like this journal, this is somebody who I shared Vintage Gentlemen, the concept with, and they had this made for me It's a custom leather journal, and it's this is hand carved, the VG, and was sent to me. And I just opened this 2 days ago, and I was like, what is happening here? Because this thing's. I feel like Vintage Gentleman. It almost feels like it was already an entity, it already existed, and I just kind of showed up and discovered it, rather than me coming up with this idea.
I think that's probably one of the most exciting things that I see about Vintage Gentleman when I think about you as my friend, is how it's birthed. You've been able to build some really incredible things in your career, in your life. And I remember some of our first conversations of you talking about what you were doing with your production work, what you were doing with this and in LA and Hollywood and all the things that you're really gifted with. And I remember you saying, and then I've got this thing and it's Vintage Gentleman, and you showed me the logo and my eyes just went, oh, whoa. Because I tend to like nice things. And I knew right away, I went, that's interesting. I had no idea of what it was because you introduced it as a thing.
Well, I was confused because I told you I had this amazing feature film that is in development in Hollywood, and it's going to be a movie in the theaters, and like this is a big idea, it's a big deal. It's based on a true story. It's a great story. I shared a story with you, and then I talk about the company GTB Studios and what's happening there and all the content. And I was like, and then there's this thing, Vintage Gentleman, that I'm playing around with as maybe a podcast I'm going to launch. And then you're like, tell me more about Vintage Gentleman. And I was like, what? Dude, I just said I was doing a movie. You want to hear about this logo? Because basically that's all it was at that point. And I'm so grateful. I remember in our first meetings, I had no idea what was happening in the weirdest way. Like I didn't come to you and say, I need a business consultant. You were reaching out to me for a long time, and our paths weren't crossing. And then I was feeling guilty. And so I text you, and I'm like, hey, let's meet for coffee. I'm heading down to Lauderdale. I'll swing by. And I thought it would be like a quick 30 minutes, hour. We'll catch up. We're all buddies. And then you're like, you know how long it's been since we've seen each other? No, 28 years. I'm like, what? What? And then you just started asking questions. And I remember 2 hours later going, what is happening right now? And I think I said, I didn't know I needed you in my life. Because you're asking all the right questions, and which is a credit to your, your career and your career path and your business. But that was the beginning of it all. Like for me, even though I had created this logo 3 years before, and just that's how much I was just kicking the can down the road, because it hadn't fully birthed yet. It was just an idea, and it was germinated. But you poured the water on it and look at it grow. We're fast forward now. It's like we're doing our first podcast. This is big stuff. It's exciting.
I remember saying to you, your life is a story, and professionally, you tell other people's stories, and you do it really well. And I remember it hitting me as you were telling me this, and I'm watching this story just rise up, and it becomes Vintage Gentleman. And I remember what it felt like to me, because I felt it inviting me to some things that I really hadn't touched, but I knew that were there, that resonated in my heart, that I've had whiffs of here and there. But I started sensing that and feeling that. And again, that's what it's exciting to me about Vintage Gentleman, is what that did for me of you just sharing your heart. So that's two men doing man things, talking about life, where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. And in that, it was an invitation for me to say, what does that actually mean to be a gentleman? What does that actually mean in my day-to-day? How I behave, how I talk, how I think, how I treat others. And it was really, I don't think that you knew it, but it was inviting me to something. It was calling me out to say, go bigger, go more, be intentional, be well thought. And I realized, Dwayne, it made me think about some of the whys of what I do and how I do it. And I realized very quickly that there was a call in my life that I wanted to raise the bar on how I spoke to people, on how I carried myself. I don't think I've told you, but you said some things, I think, without intention, that I actually processed, thought about, and went, I could tighten up here. I could grow here. And the goal was that I would be more of a gentleman. So I referenced my grandfather. My grandfather was someone you wanted to be around, not because of his accomplishments, though he was accomplished, not because he had a ton to say, though he had a lot, but the way he carried himself. And it was a calm, it was a wisdom, it was great strength. And I look at the world nowadays, I certainly look at the folks that walk in front of me, and I see people desperate for that kind of peace, that kind of strength, that kind of candor, if you will, to be able to move through life what looks like effortlessly, but to be very powerful. Not powerful like this, but powerful meaning my life matters. I know that because I understand some things, not everything, but I understand some things. And the major one is that my life matters. So, Dwayne, as I've gotten to know you and you've invited me to be more of a part of this, even here today, I stir up with emotion and I say, let's go, let's get this to the world because people are hungry. They're hungry to know themselves. And you're getting ready to offer the tools, the feedback, the experience of other people like yourself, like me, that have a story, that have a journey that's worth hearing. And what I love about what you're doing is if your story inspires me a little bit, then your life matters. Mm. It really matters. So that doesn't mean that that's what you do for a living necessarily. That's just you being you. And it all began with you just sharing, hey, I've got this thing over here. And it's been, as you just said, it's been percolating for 3 years. So I wonder, Dwayne, I wonder how many people listening to this have a thing that's kind of dormant in their heart, in their lives, that's maybe been trampled by failures, by traumas, by all these things that just happen in life. We'll just call it life. I wonder how many men and women are out there today listening that are going, I wonder. And I wonder how many are waiting to be set free or given the right, really, to explore some of those deeper things, the things that you... At some point, you drew the line in the sand. You said, okay, I'm going this way. And I watched as your world went like this. Whoop! And what you thought was primal became secondary. And as VG rose above that because it resonated with your heart. Mm-hmm. So, again, I've said it about 4 times now. I'm excited for what this means to culture. Inviting people to their greatest and giving them the tools. This is where we have a gap. There's a lot of noise right now in this world of do this and do that, and a lot of it is just self-grandizing. It's self-promotion. It doesn't really have a big trickle effect outward. What you're talking about is being your best version of yourself. And what you're getting ready to provide people with is tips of how do you do that? How do you put a bow tie? I don't know how to tie a bow tie. I've got one of those clipped. I can't wait. This has actually been something I didn't ever want to tell anybody, but I want to do it. Yeah. So I think of that and the other things that you've shared with me that allows me to go, oh, wow, I could dive into that, maybe even in the privacy or safety of my home. I could get bigger and better and tighter, and I could move with a greater candor in life. I know what that has meant to me already in just walking next to you and watching this unfold. And I'm excited for what that's going to mean to so many people that I think are hungry. They're hungry for this right now.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's, again, coming from you, your career path, your coaching, helping develop, I mean, people come to you with ideas. That's what you do. And then they say, how do I get this to market? And so you have an insight that a lot of people don't have when it comes to what you just said. And I'm sure there's a lot of counseling that happens with men who maybe come in and don't know who they are. And there's so much, like you said, noise out there and so many messages and confusion that maybe they're struggling to even know what their identity is. And I was reading a book called Atomic Habits, and in the first couple chapters, he talks about identity. And we tend to do that as humans. Whether you know it or not, you have an identity for yourself. Some people, the identity might be, I'm not attractive, I'm not capable, I can't speak well, I'm fill in the blank, negative. I can't. I'm depressed. And I know there's clinical descriptions for that stuff, but I'm saying generally speaking. Or you can be the person that says, I am, and not like a New Year's resolution where you go, today, you know what, I'm going to lose weight this year. Like that's proven to fail. Mm-hmm. But he says, instead of saying I'm going to lose weight this year and get fit, say to yourself, I'm an athlete. Mm. I am an athlete. And what that means is I have to train my body. And I'm serious about this. And so I'm going to get up at X time and I'm going to go to the gym. Now you're identifying as an athletic person. Maybe you don't identify as an athlete, but let's say a healthy person, feeling whatever fits you. Mm. And then tell yourself that. And so with all of the confusion out there, who do we identify as? So the 4 things that I've been thinking about a lot about for myself is my identity, which leads to my purpose. Mm. Why am I here? What am I doing? I think you hear about the statistics of depression and suicide and all this. I bet you that if you had been able to interview these people, if you asked them what their purpose was, they would probably not know. Why am I here? So purpose is huge, but you have to have identity first, and then you get your purpose. And then this idea of authenticity. I've made a joke before about faking it till you make it, not to be confused with that. But I want to identify as a vintage gentleman. Yeah. What are those qualifications? What are those character traits? And again, it's very layered, very, very different. And then the final of the 4 is legacy. Mm. Once I have the first 3, I can now think about what legacy am I leaving. And with Vintage Gentlemen, I've been fortunate in my career. I've done a lot of really fun things, really cool stuff. And for the last 5 years, I've focused mostly on creating content for some of the world's largest brands. And that's all I was doing. Now that's great, and you can do that and be fulfilled. For me individually, I found myself not being fulfilled in doing that. I had fun; it was great, provided. But I was thinking, a friend of mine had a massive heart attack, a fairly young man, and he had a wife and children, and they revived him. But his heart was severely damaged to the point where he wasn't going to live. Mm. And so he had to be put on a list for a heart transplant. And in that process, he had to say goodbye. Mm. So imagine, put yourself there. You're saying goodbye to your loved ones. And you're looking at your children not knowing that I'm going to see you in the next minute, hour, tomorrow, week. And that started to really trouble me. Mm. And I was thinking about my life and my own kids, and I was thinking, what is the legacy I'm living? If I'm on my deathbed, am I going to say, go watch the Godiva chocolate piece? Now, I have convictions about good chocolate, so don't get me wrong. But it wasn't the thing that I was saying, that's my legacy. Yeah. And again, that could be somebody's legacy, and they're happy with that, and that fulfills them. I'm not poo-pooing that. What I'm saying, for me, it wasn't enough. When I thought about the legacy that I'm leaving, I wanted something more for my kids, something that will potentially live for many more years than I can possibly live on the earth.
I wonder, Dwayne, if we started there as men, if we started with that. So you just unfolded 4 things that are really important that are shaping how you think. And the last was legacy. And you're referencing your friend who finds himself in a place where he has to actually look back and go, what have I done? Because I know I'm heading out. I wonder if we looked at that first and we said, how is my life? What's it going to result in? And we started there. I think that we would think differently about what we do every day and how we do that. That just intrigues me when I talk to men and I ask them questions like this, like, what is your purpose? And why are you doing what you're doing? And what are you hopeful for at your deathbed? You could look back. Most men really scratch their head. They want to tell me what they did. They want to tell me what their boat looks like. They want to tell me, but they struggle there. So I'm pretty keen to think that if men were saying, I want my life to matter, which I know every man would answer yes to that question. I want my life to matter. If they were willing to give themselves the right to say, well, how do I want to live? What do I want to leave behind? What that would mean today. My guess is many men would say they would be able to answer that question if you held them still long enough. That's our hardest thing as men, is to actually answer tough questions. We'd rather do and fix. But if a man could answer that question, then he could come back to today and say, okay, well, how am I going to live? How am I going to talk? How am I going to treat others? Because at the end of the day, as men, well, we're leaving legacy. Either great legacy or something less than. That I think oftentimes, myself included, when I don't think about that, when I don't start my day saying how I treat others matters eternally, then I'm just going to kind of go about doing things. So I love what Vintage Gentleman is already offering me, and it's a cue that I can think, and it's good content and good information that I can actually put in my list to go, today, I'm going to try to be a better listener. Today, I'm going to be more conscientious of when a woman walks in the room and treat her like a lady, because that's the right thing to do. I'm going to lead and show younger men what it means to be a man, because there's younger men around. I'm going to use my life in that way. I wonder, Dwayne, if through Vintage Gentleman we could be in a place where you're asking men how they want to leave this world and what imprint, what blueprint they want to have left behind. I think that's a greater motivator than today and what I'm going to do. And probably what I hear from most men, I just am trying to get through. I'm just trying to get to the week for the weekend, and then Monday comes and they say, I'm just trying to get through. That's not a way to live. When I think of a Vintage Gentleman, I think of calm, cool, calculated, and enjoying the moment. That's one thing I've learned about Vintage Gentleman, is it is about that. And the how-tos, well, again, that's I'm excited because that's what you're ready to bring to this world, is these great how-tos from men that have tasted what you said, wins and losses, joys and pain, which is part of life. That's all okay if we're absorbing that and applying that to, okay, well, how am I going to digest it? What does that mean about me? Do my failures define me, or are they just launching points for me to stretch and to be better? I like that legacy piece that you were talking about.
That's great. I'm curious, because you do counsel a lot of men, what's the one thing that you think, if there is a trait that maybe there's more than one, but that kind of comes up in the conversations that you have? I mean, does it deal with identity or what is a man, or any of these ideals of who, what we're supposed to be and who we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do, that kind of a thing?
That's a great question. If I had to boil it all down, so I work with very successful men. I have worked with men that are just starting their journey, and everywhere in between, with traumas, with identity, with all those things. And every person that I have the luxury, the opportunity, the invitation to be in their life, they're really saying, who am I? That's what they're trying to answer. They might be asking that question by saying, I need my business, my life, my house, my relationships to be different. But what they're saying is, who am I? Mm-hmm. So that's a deep, deep question that typically, myself included, I look around and I see what other people say about me. I look at the things I move with my hands, and I often try to define myself by those things. Versus, who am I as a man? What am I called to? What are the things that just well out of me? And let that be my definition. So to answer your question, I think men and women are just hungry to know who they are. The noise I was talking about is we've got all this messaging now with technology, and all these voices that suddenly a lot of people's voices seem to be really important, and we don't have enough time with this technology that we're experiencing right now, this social media, this world, this disconnectedness, though people feel connected, that we don't have enough history to say, is what these folks saying producing fruit? Is it creating legacy? Is there long-term good vibrations that come out of it? So that puts people in a really risky place. If you're listening to the loudest voice, well, you can buy yourself into being the loudest voice. That doesn't necessarily mean that voice is saying anything that intrinsically will create value. So vintage gentlemen, when we look backwards, you've said this to me a couple of times, when we look backwards, even at this country and where we come from, when we look backwards, we can see some things because we have the gift of history to say this equaled this. Mm-hmm. Now we're living in a instant society where we go, well, maybe this and maybe that, and I think this, and we don't have enough time. And time will tell if some of these flashy things produce fruit. But one thing I know as a man is I can look back and say, hard work produces fruit. Smart work produces a lot of joy. I can look at some things that are just, it's not rocket science. And I like the vintage part of that. I don't like that there's something new for everything. I love that we can trust history. A really wise woman said, I always botch this quote, time is a great revealer of deception. So if that's true, what sounds great this moment, well, in time, it will prove whether or not it's true. Well, okay, that seems to make sense. So I can look backward and say, I hear a lot of voices, a lot of things, a lot of themes. Which ones proved true? Well, history will teach us. If we want to look backwards, history is history. It'll teach us what's been tried and true. So part of my love for vintage gentlemen is I go, yeah, it's a nice thing to just be conscientious of others. It feels good, selfishly, it feels really good to treat others the way I want to be treated. It feels good to bend a knee. Those all sound selfish, but when they pour out and that's received, which I realize there's a current, a theme that says, well, you can't do that. And I say, well, no, I can. I can and I will. And if you don't like that, that's okay. But I want to be me. I want to be authentic to the gentleman that I am, that I'm created to be, and I want to let that be. And I don't want to be influenced by what everybody or people are saying is what it needs to be because, frankly, there's just not enough time that all this new thought and idea, there's not enough history to see where it's going. There's actually a good amount of data already that says over the last 30 years, some of the things that we've moved culturally to haven't worked out. And I think we're seeing that in society right now. We see it with depression. We see it with suicide. We see it with anxiety being rampant because we've moved away from the old. We've moved away from what you've called vintage, things that are tried and true that time has proved out.
Yeah, that's great. The quote that came from the idea of going back was actually a gentleman named Os Guinness of the Guinness beer family, actually.
Love Guinness.
Yeah, definitely. I was interviewing Oz, and he had said this statement that left an indelible impression on me. I was thinking about this before, and it has influenced the way I do content and creation and everything else. But the way that he phrased it has really put good words to it ever since, and I've done it going forward. So what he said was, sometimes in order for society to move forward, we have to go back. And that is the ethos of Vintage Gentleman. The idea of Vintage Gentleman, the name, I'm hoping people will understand it's us wanting to move forward in modern society, but we're going to go back to some ideas, just as you so eloquently put it, that are proven to work. They're proven to be good. They're proven to be true. They're proven to be beautiful. And we're going to model that the best that we can so that we can move forward and, again, hopefully move the needle culturally from where it is today and usher in a new mindset, a new community of men who are doing old things, looking at old ways and character traits so that we can be better men.
I love it. What you're saying is well, it's simple. We don't need to have a new remedy to things all the time. There's innovation is great in life, but what's tried and true is tried and true. And I think people want the safety of that. The tendency is, well, maybe it's not working. And I think in my world and in my business, I have to say, well, have you tried what has worked, or have you just given up on it because there's new fad, there's new trend, there's new noise? When we slow down, certainly when I slow down, I go, no, the A plus B still equals C. And when I look at the people in my office, they're hungry. They're hungry for an answer that's true. So, as you roll out and offer this through Vintage Gentlemen, and you give the world the opportunity to hear stories of men and women who have been on this ride of life, which is up and down, which is wild, which is crazy, and you pull away the layers, and people like yourself, like me, and others that you're going to interview tell the truth about their lives. It's not an easy road, but the tried and true things about using our life well, knowing how to do that, which is where we have a huge gap in culture right now. People are saying, I'd do it, I just don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And people are really afraid of failure.
Yes.
It's paralyzing. I was reading statistics the other day, and just even coming here speaking on a podcast, I could easily psych myself out. Ironically, I'm in a business that is very vocal and visual and out there for people to see. But what happens to me is I want it to be so good that if I'm having a conversation or I have to speak in front of a crowd, I could easily talk myself out of it. I don't want to do it. I get nervous, and it's because I want it to be the best it can be. But a lot of people stop there. They get nervous, and then it's over. They don't go. They don't show up. And again, from what you do, the failures are what lead to the successes. If you don't have the failures, how do you learn? How do you grow? And that's the true in life. As a father, as a husband, as a parent, as a friend, as a brother, as an uncle, we're gonna fail, and it's okay as long as we don't live in that failure, and as long as we learn from that failure. It reminds me of the conversation we were having the other day. I have a client in Napa Valley. They're wine producers. And I thought it was really interesting because as I'm learning about how to get good wine, where does it come from? I was shocked to learn that the best, sweetest fruit isn't from vines that are planted in this, what you would think, logically, it's got to be this rich, hardy soil with a lot of water and they plant it in rocky, hard clay, dense soil on a hill so that it doesn't get too much water, so that the roots have to struggle to find its nutrient. And somewhere in that process, the enzymes or the chemical reactions or whatever takes place, and that struggle produces the best fruit. And from a nature perspective, that best fruit is formed so that birds will be attracted to those vines, eat the fruit, and then take it off and plant seed in other areas from the best fruit. And I think that about my life, the disasters that I've gone through, that struggle, the fruit that I'm seeing from that is starting to look pretty sweet. But the thing is, it's not for me. Like, I'm not looking at my fruit going, that is good. Like empathy. To my own, embarrassment, I wasn't always super empathetic guy, but because of some of the things I've had to go through, there's this like sweet fruit of empathy over here. But it's for others. It's for maybe you to taste, or for those who are around me to taste. And then maybe they take that and it's good, and they think, oh, I need to spread this empathy myself. And what a picture, what a word picture for Vintage Gentlemen. Like let's collectively come together. I can learn from you. You can learn from me, maybe. I see that sweet fruit around you that you have that maybe I don't have, and I want to try that, and I take that out into the world. Can we move the needle culturally? Could it leave a lasting impact? Could there be legacy from that idea?
I love it. Yeah, the vineyard and the roots going down in rocky places. I think that about our lives, and I think about how we look at others and we go, well, they've got it different. And the dialogue, the inner dialogue I hear, and it's one I wrestle with as well, is, well, they have it better. And that's what it appears, because I'm looking at the outside. But being invited into men's lives, into people's lives, and being honest with myself, I realize, well, there's a lot of rocks. The stick-to-itness, the divine nature of what you just described, producing that beautiful fruit, and it not being just for your consumption, but for others, makes the journey all make sense. So I could hear that, Dwayne, and say, so, wow, when you're in really rocky soil and things are really tough and you're having a hard time seeing why and what, if you stick to it and you let your roots go down, there will be fruit. And when that fruit comes, by sticking to it, knowing that that will happen, it's to not only look at it and enjoy it because it's a fruit of your labor, of staying in difficult times, but it's to give and share. There's no greater model and definition of what life's really about. A gentleman is constantly bowing. I think we've gotten it wrong in the world, that we think a gentleman is royalty and you need to bow down. A gentleman is constantly opening his hand and saying, after you. That's a powerful thing that I think we're losing in culture. I think it's all about me, and then if I have anything left over, maybe I'll hand something to you. So what you're proposing, what you're showing, what you're going to be offering the world is a different model, but it's not different. It's always been. It's just been suppressed with all that noise right now. So, Dwayne, I'm excited because I know what you're doing. That's why I get so excited is I know that this hunger of what people are really looking for is, how do I do that? It blows me away sometimes because I can only see with my lens, my perspective of when someone shares something like you did. Hey, I could get ready for something, and my anxiety could get so strong that I don't even show up. I can't tell you how many men and women have told me their story, and they're right at the precipice of greatness, and either because they don't have the how-to, they don't have the education, they don't have someone modeling, they don't have someone saying, go, you can do it, they just quit. So that anxiety cripples them, and then when they don't actualize because the anxiety's crippled them, guess what it turns into? Great depression. Depression is just staring in the rearview mirror. All of that could be prevented with a little love, a little care, a little information, and a little holding hands together. Vintage Gentlemen we're a community. I'm not there. I don't know how to tie a bow tie. The world now knows. Uh-oh. And I'm free because of that. So, as you roll this out, and as Vintage Gentlemen and the content and the product, I'm just so excited, not just for what it's going to be to me, but what I can offer it to others that I know are hungry, that have big questions, that are afraid to answer them. They're afraid to ask them. They want the answers, but it's almost like it's wrong to say, I don't know. It's almost like it's weakness to say, man, I'm kind of broken. And the great gift of life is it's the opposite. Yeah. I've talked to you about it. When we lead on our knees, which is a place of surrender, we're actually standing really tall because we're recognizing that we are weak and that we do need strength. And that strength is by knowing oneself. And the content that I'm so excited to get out there and see is to teach men and women of the how-to. How can you do that practically today? What's one little bite that I can take home today and put into my life and start seeing my roots go down and that fruit come up? Dwayne, that's just powerful. And selfishly, I get kind of excited about gear that says something, that's got a cool logo that somebody says, hey, Michael, what's that? And I get to tell them a story about how a thing, an idea, a thing turned into a movement, turned into a product, turned in way beyond than a podcast that turned into empowerment.
That turned into legacy.
That results in legacy.
Yeah.
That changes this world. So, boy,
yeah,
let's go.
Well, that's our slogan. Actually, is an action item.
Yeah.
Our slogan is "Be a gentleman."
Yeah.
I remember growing up and walking toward the door and having my parents call, "Be a gentleman," and open that door, Dwayne. So I've thought that's a good slogan. It's an action item. Be a gentleman, and let's be gentlemen together.
Yeah.
It's the first episode of many. When this is released, people will see it. There's going to be a gap, kind of like when you want to binge a good show on Netflix and it's not coming for another 5 weeks. I'm sorry. I apologize. We want to get this out just to let people know we exist, but there's already other people in the queue. We're going to be interviewing so that we have a backlog of interviews in case, I get sick or travel, then you can have a fresh one in the coming weeks. But very soon, this will officially launch. Let's call this the soft launch podcast. And then when we hard launch, all the content will start to appear over the next coming weeks, months, and years. So very excited about that.
So excited. So excited. So Dwayne, when you interview guys, I know some of the people that you're going to interview. I'm really excited because I'm so curious of their story. Because they're guys that I think I know their story, but I only know what I see, and that's their successes. Right. Are you going to dive in with guys and hear their story and find out the ins and the outs? What's your thinking there?
Yeah, I mean that is the idea with the podcast. I mean, the podcast for me is more kind of casting the wide net. The great thing about Vintage Gentlemen is that there's no topic that we won't talk about. Like as humans. So there won't be an end. That's why this will live longer than me, because I can't possibly interview everybody about every topic that we want to know about. So it's going to be, finance people who, that's a part of manhood. How do I manage my finances well? You need to talk to my buddy Danny.
Yeah.
How do I fill in the blank? How do I parent? How do I have a good marriage? How do I manage this argument with my brother? There's a split in the family. I've lost a child. What do I do? Everything that, from exciting fun to the deep hard aspects of life. We want to interview everybody that can provide something for all of us. To grow and glean and learn from all different disciplines, all different walks of life, men and women, at all different levels of profession, but who have something to contribute that's substantial. And we all do. All of our stories count. That's all this is about. We have all these stories, our lives, these little circles of stories, and then they converge, and there's a through line in all of them. And as your story is being told and the things that I might not experience as I'm watching your story and that converges with my story, then we have a bigger story and it becomes a new story. We still have the old story and then we're telling the next part of the story. I mean, we could all glean from that.
Yes. Dwayne, so we're talking Vintage Gentlemen and you've mentioned females a couple of times. So I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, I know as people are listening to this, they're going to be saying, I want more. And they're going to be saying, what can I do next? So question one, how can people that are getting excited about what they're hearing get involved now in this movement? Because the ship's already left the port.
Yeah.
Question one. Two, I'm curious of your opinion on the ladies in this. So I know since I've been walking this road with you and I've been sharing this story, I've had women tell me very clearly how men, are not behaving. And they've been very vocal about how men are not stepping to the plate and being men. And as I've been dialoguing with you, I've been really curious of what do you mean, young lady? And I'm hearing something. So I'm curious of how Vintage Gentlemen sees women helping make this a complete thing, because at the end of the day, as a man, I'm a single man. I'm really hopeful that I'll attract a wonderful woman and that she'll want to go on a wonderful adventure of life with me.
Mm-hmm.
So speak to me a little bit about how ladies, what does this mean to ladies?
Yeah. Well, to answer your first question, which is what do I do now if this does resonate with you and you want to be a part of it?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the first things you could do is go to the website, ventgent.com, and join the movement. Like, put your information in, because we're collecting information so that we can then speak into your lives. But when the content is created, you'll know about it. For when there is an event that will eventually take place, you'll know where it is. And then be able to participate by becoming a gentleman. Becoming a gentleman. That's the first easiest thing to do, is start thinking about who you are, who you want to be. Again, identity. What are you passionate about? What's your purpose? Be authentic with it, and what legacy do you want to leave? Those are some actionable items right there that you can start with. As far as the women go, I've talked to different women. In fact, there are a few women out there that their career, like you as a business coach, they're business coaches for men. That's their client base, only men. They're women who are coaching men. So what? We're gonna dig into that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
What are you telling them? You said you want to meet a woman. Well, shouldn't you know what a woman wants? So let's talk to women and see what they want in a man. Yeah. I can pretend like I know. I already know. Communication. I could pretty much say most men are pretty stunted in their ability to communicate well, emotionally. When I'm speaking specifically, you might be a good orator. I'm saying, can you really take what's in here and voice it in a way that a woman hears it? Because those are nuances. Like, I want to get to the point. I like logic and reason, and I just want to say it, and I want to fix. That's a trait that men have. A lot of men have. So when I've done that to women, to the woman in my life, I go, well, let's do this and this and this, and it'll be better. And she's like, you're not listening. You're not hearing me at all. I'm not asking for that. I want you to just listen to me and tell me it's going to be okay, and tell me you're going to walk beside me, and tell me you're going to put your arm around me, and tell me you're going to talk with me about this, and let me just share that with you. Okay.
Powerful stuff we need to hear.
It's tough.
So we're going to hear ladies voicing what they really want, what they're hungry for. Yeah. And that's, for me, single guy, that's going to help me to go, because I'm like you. I realize I'm missing it there. And if I had a cue, if I had a playbook, I'd probably follow it. That's exciting. So you'll be interviewing ladies and...
Yeah, all different times. I mean, there's, women who are CEOs I want to talk to about leadership. I think there's things that maybe we could glean from leadership style. I mean, we're, again, generally speaking, we're all men called to be leaders, right? So how do we lead? Yeah. The idea of even servant leadership, what does that mean? It's kind of a catchphrase, servant leadership. Okay, what does that mean? We'll talk to women again about parenting, about business, about relationships. Again, every topic coming from another perspective could only help us grow.
Leadership, how to not just survive, but how to thrive as a human being. Specifically, how do we become the best of ourselves, the best version of ourselves? I'm just so excited. I'm ready to go.
I know. We've said it, so excited so many times in this podcast. I don't know if we're going to have to hit the cough button. David, our wonderful producer, is going to have work cut out for him just to cut out the so excited parts of our... We're so excited. Tell me how you feel. I'm so excited. The good news is it's real. We are so excited. How else do you express it, I guess, is what we're lacking. We have to come up with some new terms. I'm pumped. pumps, man.
It's
This
getting
is
real.
rad. Yeah. Yeah, it's great, dude. I'm so excited. No. I really appreciate you coming, taking time out of your day, taking time possibly away from some clients who have needs, taking time from your surf schedule.
It's costing you. It's costing me dearly because it's good here in South Florida today. Yeah.
No, I really appreciate you being here and kind of unpacking at least the initial, quick pass of what Vintage Gentleman is, the idea and what we want to accomplish. There's so much more. I mean, we could probably spend the day here talking and talking and talking because we have. I mean, you think about the last 14 weeks specifically of what you and I and your partner have sat down and discussed and developed and created. Because as you guys said to me, do you want to just create something or you want to create something that lasts?
Yeah.
And so we've really been pouring into that, creating something that lasts idea. And it's resonating with people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's beyond, again, this isn't something, I feel like I'm late to the game,
That's been the theme, when we've been talking about, certainly in my circles, when I talk about it, I watch men's eyes gleam, and when they slow down and I ask them, they're saying, what does that actually look like? Because what they want to answer the question. I want to be a vintage gentleman, and what they're telling me is, I really don't know what that means or how to do it, but I want it. It's that simple, which the information being spread out there and pushed out there that, hey, you can be working on these things. Those are how-tos that men can connect to. We like to fix, we like to do, ourselves included. That it's, I won't say excited, I'm pumped to give men those resources. And I'm excited for the women that are out there that have been scratching their head and saying, where are all the real men? I'm excited for those women to start meeting those men and for men to be excited about being a man and not be making excuses for that. Because that's what we're designed for. That's what we're created for.
Yeah.
Going back to look at the things that worked is exciting.
Yes, it is.
I just said it again.
I love it. I can never say it enough.
Yeah.
Go forward to go back. Go back to go forward.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Michael. Let's go be gentlemen.
Yes. Thank you, Dwayne.